All right, everybody. Um, we're going to get started here, and the first ever Fireside Chat. Really excited for this because I've always wanted to, I don't know, just create just a real and raw and honest conversation around, particular topics where it's not some boring ass slideshow or it's not talking at people, but it's really getting into a discussion that there are no restrictions. Sometimes, and I'm going to introduce our guest host as well in a minute, but there's times where I've been on um, different stages and or webinars and there's just restrictions on there, right? There's things you can't go. We got to keep it, I don't know if the word's clean, but I can't really just open up and just share. Look, these are my opinions, these are my views. I'm not here to, make anyone feel bad or put down anybody or any industry or any association. But I just feel that, we need to talk about some real shit. And that's what we're going to do today. And I invited a couple really great friends of mine, Jason Wambold from Onus One. Jason, what's happening, man?
Hey, Jamie, nice to talk with you.
Well, I was so glad that we were able to put this together. And Will Humphreys,
Hey,
uh,
everybody. Great to be with you.
Mr. Rockstar Recruiter himself.
You're just saying that.
So yeah, we have a couple of questions that we posed that we wanted to dive in, and the way the format's going to go is first I want Jason and Will to introduce themselves, just so everyone knows the perspective that we're coming from, because we all have a unique perspectives. I think there's an element of similar views, but when we were kind of putting this together just a few weeks ago, we were definitely disagreeing with some things, and that's the stuff I like. Like, let's get into it. We don't have to make it all nice. We respect one another, but we can lovingly and honestly say, Jason, I think you're full of shit, and I think what you're saying is a bunch of shit, and that's why we're in the place that we are. I can say that and still, next time I see Jason, have a drink with him. So Jason, why don't you share a little bit about like who you are, what's the perspective you're coming from, what's your story?
Sure. Thanks, Jamie, for kicking it off, and thanks everybody for carving out time to be with us today. I'm super excited about this format. We don't do this enough in the rehab space, and we need to do more of it. And I think agreeing to disagree and having some great debate is something where when we do that in a safe place, everybody wins. And so that's what we're attempting to do today. So just a little bit of background on me. I'm a physical therapist. I graduated in 1999. For about 20 years, I was involved in ownership and leadership of PT practices and managing and leading therapists and designing leadership training programs for therapists. And then in 2016, I was the co-founder of a software system that designs and administers compensation models for physical therapy practices and for the rehab industry as a whole. And so that's what now I spend the bulk of my time doing. I'm not involved anymore in the day-to-day operations of patient care or management and leadership of PT practices. I stepped away from that full-time in 2017 to focus exclusively on helping practices design compensation models that are a better fit, quite honestly, than what we've done in the past as an industry. So that's my background.
Great. Appreciate that. Rockstar Will, what's your background?
Yeah, guys, listen, the reason I'm excited to be here is because I think like a lot of you, I've just had it. I am so sick of just this downward spiral for the greatest profession in healthcare, in our opinion. Like the reason Jamie, Jason, and I came together is because we just aligned, even if we don't agree, we aligned with what we want ultimately, which is better profitability for all. Money is the F word in our industry. You can't talk about it openly with the next generation. We can't really talk about wanting to get it without pissing people off. And it's destroying us. So like my background, just really quick, I'm very passionate about physical therapy. I got into it by being a patient first. When I was 17, I was trying to impress a girl on a Friday the 13th, and I fell off a mountain rock climbing and broke 21 bones. I'm still having surgeries. I've got to get my left hip replaced already again. Like, so physical therapy is something that really lit me up because my therapist, Connie Clemens, man, she like showed me what was possible emotionally and physically as I was getting better. And I was so shocked as a PT student when I told everyone I wanted to open a practice, when everyone told me, oh, you just want to be really rich. And I was like, yeah, so what? Like, I want to be wealthy, but it doesn't mean I'm going to like abuse my patients in the process. Why do those things have to go together? So since that time frame, I had a practice. I had 5 locations. I sold it in 2018. And the main thing that I'm doing right now is I'm helping private practice owners get virtual assistants, find physical therapists, and sell their practices. That's what I do. But I really don't care about those things today. What we're going to talk about today, I think, is having like Jamey said, an honest discussion. Because like Patrick Lencioni in the book, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, he talks about how like you have to have healthy arguments to find truth. Like if you're bored, you're not doing anything in a team meeting. The same is true for these webinars. If you're sitting there bored going, well, I feel like I have to be here, you're not, this isn't going to serve you. So this is a global discussion. We're going to talk about lots of different things if these fireside chats take off. But the main thing I want you to know is that we have to kind of like just realize we're not as great as we tolerate, and just be fed up and be willing to be a little bit loud, not just individually, but professionally, to start moving the needle. So that's me, Jamey.
Excellent. Well, thank you. And for those that don't know me, I'm a business coach to the stars. No, you know what? I'm working with practice owners and getting them to think differently and think about their business, think about their lives, and create something of substance, create something of impact. In order to do that, you have to watch what everyone else does, and you literally just have to go the other way because everyone's not making it. Unfortunately, most people aren't making it, and it's unfortunate. So, but in this case, we're all coming from uniquely independent-minded business owners who have our own experience here. So I'm going to dive into the first question here, and I'm going to call on it, and we'll just see how it flows. If you have thoughts or perspectives or comments or questions, put it in the chat. All right, put it in the chat, and we'll get to it when and if it's appropriate. But this first question that we have, guys, is why is there a mass exodus of PTs leaving this industry? And when I say PTs, I know there's a lot of people on this call that are not in the physical therapy world, but let's just use that as a ubiquitous term. It could mean mental health. It could be pediatrics. It could be any other chiropractic. I mean, there are people leaving those professions. Why is that? Will, what comes to mind when you see that, when you hear about that people are leaving?
Oh man, it like breaks my heart. And there's like this part of me, if I'm being really honest, like there's this side of me that's like, yeah, it's because I can't blame them because they're coming in with all the student loan debt and they're coming into a job where we're doing the best that we can, but honestly, we're not managing them well. We're barely surviving as owners. So how can we expect that we're going to bring on a physical therapy graduate and be able to help them progress when we don't know how to progress ourselves? There's that. And then I also think, Jamey, that this next generation just doesn't have the work ethic that the previous generations did. I honestly blame them a little bit for a lack of passion. But I will tell you that like the thing that makes me angry is that you get onto these Facebook groups, and there's large Facebook groups where they get together and they're looking for help and they're getting answers from people who are leaving, the people who either don't have the right fit for a job or they themselves are just like a bad fit for the industry, and they're burning their way out of the industry. They're on Facebook blasting it saying, this profession sucks. We don't help anybody. It's not worth it for the money. Me. And then people are like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do that. So there's a lot of good people, I think, that would do really well in our profession, who would work with an owner to figure it out if they could just not be exposed to this like almost anti-physical therapy rhetoric that's existing with these Facebook groups that are out there. So, I mean, I'm sure the problem is more layered than that, but I think it all begins going back to that point of like, there are people like we as a profession, to me, I think the ultimate blame comes to us. We don't think about money healthily. We think of it as like this dirty word. Like when I go speak to universities, I'll say, I want everyone here to make as much money as possible being a physical therapist. And they're like, whoa, how dare you? And it's like, no, man, I think how we think about money has got to shift as an industry. We got to be willing to do it ethically. I'm not saying we go out there and see 100 patients a week with no techs and one PT, but I'm saying we got to start changing it on our end before we can expect them to see the vision and stay.
Do you think it's solely money? Do you think they're leaving because it's just a money issue? Or do you think it's more than that? There's a great saying, and if you guys, whoever knows me knows I have lots of saying and quotes. People don't leave a company, they don't leave a business, they leave a boss.
Mm.
So, if that is true, if that has some element of truth, then the people leaving are leaving a person, an owner or a manager or all that. Do you think that's holding up here, or do you think this is a cut and dry relationship of, I ain't making enough money, I got too many loans, it's not adding up, I got to go outside and all of that? Jason, what are your thoughts?
I don't think it's exclusively about money, no, because there are a lot of therapists that are after work-life balance more than a paycheck. And ultimately, at the end of the day, what they want is to have as much time off as they would like to have, even if that means working less. Here's an example. 15 years ago, if we were interviewing a therapist and that therapist said, I'd like to work at your company and I'd like to work 31.75 hours a week, I would have said, thanks for the conversation. That's not consistent with what we're looking for. Best of luck to you. Today, if that person wants to work 31.75 hours a week, we're hiring them and we're structuring the arrangement so that they work 31.75 hours a week and not a tenth of an hour more. Because if they work a tenth of an hour more, now they're unhappy. Now their work-life balance is altered. Now they think it's our fault that their work-life balance is altered. So there's been a massive shift over the last 15 years. So it can't be about money because we have large percentages of the workforce purposefully looking for employment where they can work less. That being said, I think we have to say, all right, well, then what's going on here exactly? Where is this coming from? Back to your point, Will, when you said you went and I think you said you were lecturing or you were doing a talk at a university, right? And you said, I want everybody to make as much money as you can. And you said everybody gasped.
Yeah.
You know who I think was gasping the most? The professors in the PT program. And so I think that's one of the things that we have to talk about that is not popular to talk about. What is academia telling the next generation of therapists that is different from what the real world is introducing them to? And I think that's a big reason why we're losing therapists, because they're being programmed a certain way. I about 10 years ago, I was doing a lecture at a PT practice, and I heard one of the professors after I finished my lecture. It was not an academic lecture. It was not a clinical lecture. It was a lecture on how to pay your loans off. So it's sort of a practical application thing. And the professor, after my lecture, got up front, thanked me for the lecture, and had a great relationship with this professor. And he said, these are his words, quote, if you ever find yourself in a practice being asked to treat more patients than you're comfortable treating, get out of there as fast as you can.
Yeah.
That's what he said. So I think that's something that we have to address as well.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it's, I think it's deeper than that. One of our coaches at Practice Freedom U, Lindsay, is in the mental health space, and she said something to me that just flat out I was like, wow. She goes, Jamey, in our profession, it is called money shaming. They are money shaming us intentionally. They're not hiding behind it. They're saying that, you know, if you want to make money, there's something wrong with you.
Who's
You're
doing the
bad.
shaming, Jamey?
Huh?
Who's doing the money shaming?
Oh, the powers that be in the schoolings.
In the academia. Yeah.
The academics. You know, the people that, you know, more or less, if you can't teach, you know, it's be careful who you're learning from. But when you're, you know, this young, absorbing everything person, and you're taking it all, at their word, and it could be flat out telling you that, like, you know, she was describing me, like they flat out say that's not why we're in this profession.
Yeah.
If you're in this profession to make money, if that's what you care about, you might want to rethink that. Like, it's bad if you're making money, which then seeps into every decision that you're making. And even if you start to make money, and I've seen this happen, I've done this myself because I've had my own money blocks, that I'll start making decisions that actually sabotage my business. I don't know if anyone out here has ever done that, but you make decisions that literally are sabotaging your own business because you're starting to get too successful. You're starting to make money, and this little voice is kicking in and say, wait a minute, that's not who you are. You're good. And you start to play this good and evil bullshit. Like, and you establish, well, good is what? It's what anyone told you what good was. This right and wrong, it's what they told you what's right and what other people told you what's wrong. And this seeps into how we think about our professions. And then as business owners, this is how we're building up a business. And I think another thing when we talk about this mass exodus is this idea of perhaps we are operating in an old archaic model that needs to shift. The strongest don't survive, Will, do they? It's the ones that are able to adapt. And healthcare, especially the allied health world that we're in, we are slow as freaking molasses trying to adapt to things. And AI is going to force that to be a wider gap as we continue to move forward. And, you know, if you were, and I'll pose this question to everyone, has anyone asked you that's interested in going to school, let's say PT school, I'm interested in going to PT school, what have you told them?
I can tell you what I told my son who asked me that question.
What do you tell your son?
I said, if you can get through PT school with your total debt load equal to or less than your first year's salary, it makes economic sense to do it. If you can't, it doesn't. And that's part of the challenge of our profession, because the average PT graduate has over $120,000 in debt, but isn't making anywhere near that as a new grad. So it's not a good value proposition. That's the challenge. That's what
I respectfully disagree with you, brother. I appreciate where you're coming from on seeing that perspective, but I told my son, I told him, I said, listen, this is the best time to become a physical therapist since the history of becoming a physical therapist. An unpopular opinion, I know, but here's why. It's because if you know how to go into entrepreneurship, if you know how to do a few things that most of the industry is too unwilling to look at, you can dominate. Look at the factors, guys. The population's getting older. They're getting older and older. The demand is growing so intensely that the U.S. economic surveys are projecting that there'll be a deficit for physical therapists for the next 40 years. Our service is high in demand, and we get devalued and devalued and devalued. So there's two elements here. I think anyone who becomes a PT right now has an opportunity to thrive if they're willing to think about money the right way and get rid of all that crap that they learned from the educators. I agree with both of you guys. The educators are absolutely the number one problem in our industry. I love them as individuals. And I will say over the years, I've seen them get more entrepreneurial because they have to, but it's still this money shaming thing. And I want them to say, listen, it's wrong to overbill just as much as they say it's wrong to underbill.
Mm-hmm.
And if we could balance this out and be like, now listen, let's talk about how you guys are going to pay off your student loans by becoming entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs in one of your companies, guys, then we'd start to change our mindset around money because listen, it's like we start losing our perspective of what's possible across all of these layers. Like as students, they're told money is bad. If you're seeing more than one patient an hour, you're evil. Guys, I've coached companies in New York State where they're seeing a minimum of 80 visits a week and their PTs are kind of burning out. I've coached so many practices in Alaska where they make $250 a visit. I'm willing to bet no one on this call's from Alaska because they're not struggling. You are?
Oh, we have
Congratulations.
one.
I'm so proud of you. Here's what's funny. Those practice PTs are burning out at 38 to 40 visits a week. Almost half. It's a mindset thing for sure. And it's got to start with us as the experienced entrepreneurs to start shifting that and calling out the educators. And there's element, look, when it comes to APTA, I'm just going through topics. When it comes to the APTA, I feel very strongly that we should support it. And it's not helping in many ways. I think that we have to support it first and change it from within because we got to start getting louder about changing the mindset on the educational level and start being proponents of our own industry and saying, no, you got to get in it. And there's a fortune of impact and income for you if you're willing to think a certain way. And that looks like becoming an entrepreneur and hiring guys like Jamey. There's a lot of great coaches out there. And I'm not saying this because like we have anything professional. I wouldn't say this unless it was true. Jamey is like the real deal when it comes to that. Jason is as well. They both promote coaching in a way that I have experience as high level. But if you don't have that kind of support, if you don't have a network, you're going to, like Jason said, you're going to regret it because then it becomes about this like transactional versus transformational experience. Transactionally, it doesn't make sense, right? So yeah, makes sense.
So let's stay on this for a second around the money. How much is it the responsibility of the owner to provide to fix this problem, to provide that? In other words, you know, when I work with clients, I'll just share my own experiences. When I work with clients, one of the first things I'm doing in quote assessing them is I'm assessing their money roadblocks, their own money issues. Because if you have deep-seated money issues, then you're going to resist certain things to make money. You're going to resist to certain activities to make money. So once you kind of address those, it's really about the owner looking at what are you providing that's meeting the needs of the people that are coming out. In other words, people want to be a part, I believe, people want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. They don't want the 9 to 5, clock in, clock out, and there's nothing really separates you from the million other practices in your area. That's number one. If nothing really separates us, then it's basically a race to the bottom of how much more money you can pay, and we can't compete with the bigger players out there. So the way that we can separate ourselves is stand for something. What do we stand for? What are we about? But if you don't do that work, then the arguments that you're only going to have is money, time off, benefits, money, time off, benefits. But what I have seen, and I've seen this I've saw it in my own business, and I've seen it now for the last 11 years, working with hundreds and hundreds of practices, that every single one, when you start to get really clear about who you are, what you're about, what you stand for, what your standards are, what your impact is, you attract the people that want to be a part of that. And as long as you pay them fairly, they come to you. But if you don't do that, you just join these Facebook groups and bitching and complaining about the insurance company and doing all that kind of stuff. Well, no one said you had to be with insurances. I got one more thing I want to rant about with this. As a profession, I knew we were going down a bad path back in 2012. Does anybody recall in 2012 what was happening in the APTA? What the vision was in 2012? It was Vision 2020. And Vision 2020 in my view, was about more education. It was about becoming the doctors. It was about competing on that level, academically competing on that level. Now, fine, we want to become doctors. That's great. So what happened? You want to become a doctor? Great. Go another year in school. And that gives every damn university a chance to charge even more money. But the insurance companies aren't going to pay more because you're a doctor. So where's the money going to come from? Did anyone think about that? Here's another thing. We went crazy with it. And I know some of the people that were involved in this, and there was a lot of people involved in the self-interest of this, the self-interest of education, because education is a big damn business. And what was happening is we were then selling what? Postgraduate education.
Yep.
We need certifications. We need
Residencies.
fellowships. We were selling people on their ego for intelligence. Then they do it all.
Yeah.
And what happens? They want to work for Will, and Will goes, I don't give a shit if you have all this. Can you show me how you can use this to actually generate more income for this company? Because if you can, hey, I'm all for it. But if you don't know actually how to sell, market, or promote anything you do, but you think people should just come to you, you have a bunch of credentials after your name, which don't get me started on the 26 letters that we have after our names, and we wonder why we're in this place, instead of putting that same effort, money, and resources behind figuring out this, our entire profession is based on a third party that is listening to people with deep pockets. And we're all scattered around as individual practice owners, bickering between us.
Yeah, Jamey, if I can jump in, I think it's
do.
ironic that you just mentioned the fact that like the universities that are perpetuating this like money shaming idea are doing it for the money. Like
For profit.
Yeah, what are they doing? They're creating, like you said, all these secondary, all the alphabet soup. And I love that you said ego, because ego is just a compensation for insecurity, right? You know how it's like to graduate from school. Oh crap, I don't even know what I'm doing and I'm seeing patients. So maybe if I get a lot of letters behind my name, what we should be teaching them in the universities is how to sell patients. Oh no, I said another dirty word, sell. Oh no, like I want our PTs to understand that it's all, like I'd rather, like you, Jamey, I'm sure, and Jason, if I had a physical therapist who showed up with just a regular entry-level PT degree, but an incredible personality who people are going to like and want to see, that's my moneymaker. And we should be rewarding that. I'm not saying that we shouldn't look for secondary educations, but it's an order of hierarchy. Like what matters most? What matters most is impact, because that's the thing about money. We're right. The universities have it right. When we focus on money as our purpose, that's when we start screwing things up. But when we start thinking of it as evil, then we forget that all money is a measurement on how well we're impacting people. And so it's like the score on the scoreboard of a football game. At the Super Bowl, they don't feel bad if they got less than 50 points. All they care about is that the score is bigger than their opponents. So we want to do the same thing with money and drive that in. Jamey, real quick, we've had a lot of really good responses. Maybe we should go through and read some of those, and people are posing some great questions as well.
We can. I do want to get to the next question though, because it can get away from us. So let me pose this and then we can get into it all. Next topic. The fear-driven state of people selling their PT practices. And let me put a caveat. We're not talking about people that are late in life, 35 years, 40 years in the business, and they're looking to sell because, hey, they're ready to move on and go off in the sunset. We're talking about people in their 30s and 40s that are selling because of fear. Jason, what's your take on that?
Yeah, so we have to have I think we have to have a massive shift in how we think about practice ownership today and how we think about how we're interacting with our employees. Because you're right, we have a lot of owners who have painted themselves into a corner by giving their employees everything that they think they want, and they still leave. So we're going to give them whatever they want, whatever number of hours, whatever benefit, whatever salary. We give it all to them, and we still end up with the resignation letter on our desk. And then as an owner, we say, I don't know what else to do here. I've given them everything they've asked for, and yet I still have this massive turnover. And as soon as I have turnover, I know it's going to take me however many months to find a candidate and to get them trained and get them up to speed. And I'm going to lose all that money. And I, as the owner, am probably going to have to end up stepping in and treating just to try to cover the gaps during that period of time. That's it. I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to sell my practice. And by the way, under those circumstances, you're not getting the type of multiple that you should be getting for your practice, because somebody who is a buyer could sniff that out very, very quickly and very easily. So I think we need to look at things differently with regard to how we're communicating with our employees. Specifically, we've talked about the fact that young therapists have a certain notion of how they should think based on what they learned in school. What we need to do is give them an alternative approach. Here's an example. What about giving therapists a guarantee of opportunity and potential, but not guaranteed income itself? So as the owner, what I'm going to do is give you the opportunity to be as successful as you'd like to be, but you have to walk down that path. You have to pull the levers. You have to do whatever's necessary to be as successful as you'd like to be. What I'm not going to do is just write you a check because you think that your alphabet soup behind your name warrants an automatic $10,000 raise. I'm not going to do that. We're going to pay you according to what you're generating for the practice, what you bring, your unique skills, the fact that you're bringing in patients that we would not otherwise be able to see. Those things have monetary value, but I'm not just going to pay you more because you didn't leave last year. But that's what's happening. And so the fastest way to go out of business is to raise yourself to death. Every year, 3%, 4%, 5%. And then you wake up 10 years from now and realize you've got all these people that didn't leave, which theoretically is a good thing. And yet every one of them is generating the same or less revenue than the new grad that you just hired last week. That's the piece that has to change. And if it doesn't change, we're going to continue to see practices selling much more prematurely than they would like to.
Will, what's your take on it? I don't know the data of the rate of practices being sold. I know for a while, from what I was told, it was pretty damn high. I think the pandemic shifted that. I don't know if it's come back as strong because there's only so many clinics that could consolidate all the way up the food chain. Yeah. What is your thoughts around this person that is just overwhelmed, inundated, not making money, working their butts off, sacrificing family and everything else? And they're like, hey, somebody said they can bail me out and all that and basically just give me back a job. What's your thoughts on all that fear-based practice?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question because Jamey, that's a great end in mind of this whole meeting today, because when it comes to exiting and why we're exiting, and you're right, there's a huge increase, there's a mass exodus occurring right now in our industry, and we all know why. It's what you just said. It's this, as an industry, we're not equipping the brave entrepreneurs, the people who are making time to be on this call, we're not equipping them with the right tools, and they don't know where to find them, right? I don't want to victimize the entrepreneurs, but I also want to recognize there's not a lot of support. So they get to that point where, like I was, where my wife found, and this is being really raw with you guys, 15 years ago, found in my Google search, she was on my computer and found me searching for painless ways to kill myself. So I was at the point of thinking about killing myself. That's how bad it was. And I get it, because reimbursement sucks. I'm trying to be everything to everyone and I'm losing myself in the journey, and I don't have time to even work out, man. I'm at a point where I'm looking in the mirror going, what happened to my body? What happened to these, the bags? I have a bald spot. No kidding. It's not genetic for me. I have this bald spot that's 100% my old practice. And so multiple times I went to go sell my practice. I think how most people sell their practices, which is out of, I don't know if you guys being fed up and burned out. And I don't want to like make that wrong, but there is a way, I think, if people just knew. And I'm so grateful I started with coaching. It feels like I'm promoting you and Jason, but I'm not, and I am, but it's because I'm from a place of like, that's what saved my life. Literally, my wife turned to me and she goes, why don't you go find a coach? There was no internal coaches back then. So I had to find someone outside, which was helpful, but not as helpful as someone who's in the industry, right? But that's what started this journey. And by the end, I had 5 locations, was working less than 10 hours a week and had a bench of PTs waiting. And it's not because I was this great owner. It's because anyone can do it. It's a matter of getting the right tools that we don't supply people. So I've talked to the CEO of publicly traded companies and private equity groups on the regular. Guys, I want you to hear this. They are treating you like a distressed asset when they purchase you in that position. They're coming in, giving you a 3 to 4 times EBITDA, having you sign on for 5 years, and you're getting a couple $100,000 for an asset that they can turn around in less than 24 hours, guys. Because like, let's take a publicly traded company. They evaluate their company based on price to earnings ratio. That's different than EBITDA standards. So if you don't know what I'm saying here, just bear with me, but let's just say your net profits, right? They come in, you have 3 to 4 times your net profits is what they'll pay for your practice. They'll have you sign on for a while. The next day after close, if they're a publicly traded company like an ATI, they get, as horrible as they've been, they're getting traded at the equivalent of 30, 40 times EBITDA. Your value goes up multiples of 10 of what they've paid you the day they open the practice after they've signed the contract. And they don't want you to know that. They want you just to be like, oh, you're my savior. Thank you. And then they come in like a distressed asset. They tie you to the business and take away some headaches.
Well, let me jump in there because you're bringing up my favorite thing to talk about here is they look at us as a bunch of workers.
Yeah.
We're just employees to them. They're taking your passion and your dream of owning a business. Now, I get it. There's some people in the world of business that should not be in business. They absolutely should be working for someone.
Sure.
But most of us have this entrepreneurial spirit, this thing inside of us that we've always had that has come to light, that we've taken action on, but we have no support or education around it. And we're stuck with this old way of thinking. And these people know that, and they know you're struggling. And then they come to you and they tell you everything you need to hear. We'll give you this, you'll have this, and you're basically selling your soul because you turn into a freaking employee, having to get permission to go on vacation, permission to go to your son's basketball game, permission to do everything with only a certain number of hours. Now, if you're okay with that, pardon my French, then get the fuck out. Because I don't want broke ass people in our profession, because then they start chirping and everyone believes that's what business is about. And Will is flat out saying, no. The business is not about that. There is tons of opportunity, but we have to shift how we're thinking. We have to shift this. There's 338 million people in the US. Everyone has a human body that breaks down. We got plenty of people out there, but we don't think the right way because we haven't been trained to think the right way. In fact, we've been trained to think like little pathetic employees. That's how we've been trained to think. And then Big Brother comes along and says, I'll give you pennies on the dollar for your practice. Then they go to their insurance carriers and say, give us 10 times what they were making. And they go, of course we will, because they have a huge footprint and they know they can't live without them. Then they go and they say, we're going to make 40 times what your practice was worth. But they make it seem like they were doing you a favor. I don't have anything against those companies. Hey, that's capitalism.
Yeah.
But it's up to us. We're selling a business because we chose not to look at it as a business and to build a business. Is it hard to do? Well, it's hard if you don't know what you're doing. But if you actually invested time to actually learn it, just like you invested a decent amount of time and money learning your practice, your trade, first of all, you're not going to have to spend as much. And second of all, it's not going to take as long. And third of all, you're going to see the results much, much quicker. If you just did that, how many more small practices out there would be more successful that would say, F you, I'm not selling. One of my clients is one of those people. They wanted to give him, and I won't say his name, but they wanted to give him $10 million, close to 10 million, $9.2 million. And him and I were talking about it. And I said, well, that's a lot of money. And he's fairly young. He's not, 70, like he's young. And I said, so what do they want to do? They're like, they want me to stay on for years. And I said, is that what you want? He goes, no, that's not what I want to do. And I said, are you willing to take that money to stay on for years afterwards, basically being an employee? And because he created his business in such a way that doesn't require him to be there day in and day out, what do you think they're going to do? Have him stay on and not do anything? No, he's going to be back being the employee, probably getting in the way and screwing up this amazing business model that he did. And he chose that the timing was not right. Very few people would have done that. Very few people have that opportunity to say no. But we have to take account that we are creating this. There are so many tools. There's YouTube. There's so much stuff out there to start learning about how to do this. But we get caught up, I feel anyways, Jason, I don't know how you feel. I feel that we just get caught up in the bitching and complaining and condemning, and we waste so much time and energy doing that instead of focusing on our business and what we want. Because business is supposed to do one thing: provide you the life that you want. That's what business is supposed to do. It's the vehicle to give you the life.
Right.
Anyone can run a business into the ground that gives you no life.
Right.
Now, do you want to do that in a way that fulfills you? Absolutely. So now you never have to justify. Will, when you first started here, you justified 3 times around, well, you should make money, but you should give quality care. Stop freaking apologizing.
That wasn't an apology, man.
I know that.
It's 2 sides of the same coin, but to your point, I agree. We should stop apologizing.
Yeah. In other words, we don't have to say, but we want to get quality. It's freaking assumed. I've never met a PT that was intentionally doing something harmful or negative or improper. So why do we keep talking about it and making a caveat?
Jamey, there's another theme. There's an underlying theme in our profession, and in particular among owners, and it's guilt. There's a lot of guilt out there. Guilt over, I should be, as the owner, the hardest working person in the practice. I should lead by example by seeing the most patients. And if I get myself, as your client did, Jamey, that you were just talking about, who walked away from a $10 million offer because he had set up a good life for himself and didn't feel guilty about it. But a lot of practice owners do feel guilty about that. If I set up an arrangement where I can work, as you were, Will, 10, 15 hours a week, and my practice is clicking on all cylinders, and I can disappear for 3 weeks. For those of you that are on the call with us right now, ask yourself, how do you respond to that? Picture yourself in an arrangement where you're working 15 hours a week. You could disappear from your practice for 3 weeks, and it would just continue to hum along. How does that make you feel? Some of you, I think, would dream about that. Others, I'm willing to bet, if you've never dreamt that way, might feel a little uncomfortable with that. Because, well, wait a minute, I'm the glue. Like, this is my baby. I built this thing. I need to have my hands in every little aspect of this business, or I start to feel out of control. That's the piece. That's the piece that we're missing as practice owners. And the only way to get to the point where you can do what Jamey described, where you can turn down a $10 million offer, is to get to the point where you can take a month's vacation, check in with your team a couple times, and feel confident that you can trust the people in place. But that's only going to happen if you're willing to invest in your people so that you can help them to be as successful as they would like to be, including leadership opportunities.
And the first thing you have to invest in is you.
Yep.
Because the way you think, how you handle those emotions that come, then the decisions you make are producing the results in your life. Thinking, actions, results.
Mm-hmm.
I've shared my story so many times about my business and having lots of problems, and we've had, people leave and people steal, and I've been investigated and all this other stuff. And every time I looked in the mirror and said, "You're the freaking problem. So
Mm-hmm.
what are we going to do about it?" I love to blame everyone else, criticize, condemn, complain. But it wasn't until I swallowed my damn ego, became a little more vulnerable, and was open to help because I had a vision of what I wanted. I wanted a business where I didn't have to go in on Monday. That was it. That's all I wanted in life. I hate Mondays. I did not want to go in on Monday. And I knew the only way to do that was to have people in place that were taking care of our clients. And of course, that led to, well, I'd have to go on Tuesday and Wednesday and all this other stuff. But because I had that vision of what I truly wanted, I got to the stage that I was willing to do anything to get it, even to swallow my pride and invest in how, not just how to do it, because the how wasn't that hard. How to build your business, not hard. You can read any business book. You can go on the YouTube, type in how to build a business. How to get over your own shit to be able to do that, to be able to have conversations with your staff, to get over your own money issues and whatever other issues you have. That's the game we're all playing. And as business owners, there's a hell of a lot on the line. And every single one of us can do it. Doesn't matter where you are, what kind of school you came from, what kind of background, where you live. That all doesn't matter. It's just about you. And too many times we are looking at the problem outside of us. Will, I know this is big for you.
Yeah, man. As an example of what you're saying, Jamey, the number one thing when I'm helping people hire PTs, they all want the 5 steps to hire a PT. They all want like the magic formula. The first thing we confront is the fact that everyone says it's hard to hire PTs. And right there, that's the mindset. And they're like, well, what's the problem? It is hard. It's like, yeah, because you keep creating it. Like, it's almost like if it's hard, it's okay for you to fail at it. If it's hard and everyone else says it's hard, it's okay that I'm not as good as I would like to be, because that would be a disappointment and an invalidation. So the mindset thing is huge, because when we can, like, for example, in that one little example, if people can start thinking, I currently struggle with recruiting, but I'm going to figure it out. Those are the people who have a bunch of PTs, and anyone can do it. Even in this discrepancy, it's really a matter of how we think. So like for me, the biggest realization, and I'll never forget this. By the way, guys, I've never not had a coach. And I really feel comfortable saying this because, again, I don't offer like a one-on-one coaching service at all. I've never not had a one-on-one coach or mentor in the last 20 years, because I've learned, and I've been told this. Yeah,
Likewise.
right? Look, there's only 2 things we have to be successful: coachable and willing to take action. Who cares if we fail? Like, that's the only way to learn. So if we have someone and how do you find a coach? You find someone who's either done the thing that you want to do or has proven they've helped others do the thing that you want to do. That's all. And you can go talk to their people, but you've got to feel that connection. I've never had a bad coach. I've only been closed-minded. That's it. Because for me, when I realized that I was the problem, one of my first coaches, I will never forget. I walked out of this meeting where I realized all of my problems were 100% my mental limitation. I sobbed in the car like a little child, because it was just this realization that I felt the weight. It was no longer a victim. It was me. And so the cool part of that, Jamey, is that the solution could be me too. And my favorite coaches are ones like you guys that are about helping you not become something you're not, but peel away the crap that's getting in the way of your greatness. And that is the coolest thing. And guys, I've had the privilege of being in networks with very successful people. My coaches have just gotten more and more experience. And every time I write that check, it hurts every single time. But when I pay attention, and there's results. And so what I'll tell you is I've seen this over time and time again with other people that are very successful. They all have a coach, always, always. Because why wouldn't you turn decades into days and get unstuck and not have to be like me, where my wife found that search history?
So Will, you're kind of looking at the fear way of PT practices the reason they're selling for pennies on the dollar is because of out of desperation.
Totally.
And the reason they're desperate is because they haven't had the right kind of thinking to make the decisions to build a business that actually is giving them the life that they want, making the money that they want.
Yeah.
Which, of course, the only way to do that in a sustainable model is to make sure, to Jason's point, make sure you have a staff that is on board with you. And to put in, of course, the SOPs and to have the financials and the marketing and those important things. But it's not more important than the person running all of that. Because the person that's operating the whole thing, whose name's on the door, not necessarily literally, but the name's on the articles of incorporation, is you. And every decision you make, good or bad or otherwise, is coming from you. The culture of the business is you. What people are seeing is you. Whether you go out there and meet people, it's up to you. Whether you're able to persuade people to come in and take action because what you're providing is so good and helpful to them and they trust you and believe you, that's all you. If you choose not to learn it, well, hey, it's capitalism, baby. It's, you know, you can get eaten alive if you want. But don't go blaming everyone else. One of my favorite songs, Michael Jackson, Man in the Mirror, man, woman, or whatever. It's you. And when you start to say, it's me, and this is what I want, this is how I want my life to be. And if you have that grit, and there's a book called Grit and Determination, and all this other stuff, then yes, it's finding the right guide. Because I don't believe any of us can do it alone. I don't believe anyone that's been successful in the history of the world have ever done it alone. It doesn't exist. And why the hell would you want to do it alone? Yet, for some reason, we encourage this either overtly or quietly. We encourage this, do it yourself. This is about you. You're smarter than everybody. You've gotten good grades. Instead of this idea of collaboration and learning. And as Will said, you know who you learn from? Learn from people of where you want to be, not just the loudest yapping voice out there giving you the wrong advice. So talking about fear-driven sales, you know, we can certainly talk about that more, but I want to spend the last little bit that we have here. Will, there's lots of questions, and I so appreciate everyone being here, and I really hope you appreciate, you know, what we're doing, and you found value in what we're doing. This is our first one, but there's a ton of comments and questions. Will, have you grabbed any? Jason, I don't know if you saw, but is there any like one that maybe stands out that we can?
Yeah, I'll ask this to Jason. It came from Gabe. Listen, guys, really cool comments. I just want to like overview. There's a lot of like recognizing the shame. There's a lot of recognizing that there's a lot of very talented people who are just like, hey, I'm dealing with this. I'm fighting insurances. Like I'm rejecting insurances. Like those are the leaders, guys. That's the stuff we have to do. This question stood out to me. He's like, because we talked about money being the F word in the industry. It says, how do you feel? How do you three feel? We stop money shaming and stop money F wording when we're trying to compensate your PTs when the confines of reimbursement issues the physical therapy profession is having. How can we balance that when we're not getting compensated fairly for what we do? Like, in other words, what do we do? Like, well, there's a money shaming thing around this, but at the same time, we're not getting paid fairly for that. Jason, how do you think we should handle that?
Well, there's two aspects to that. There's your current scenario. Your current scenario is you're getting paid what you're getting paid. And there are certain things that you might be able to change relatively quickly in that regard, increasing cash-based services, alternative services, that sort of thing. Then there are some long-term strategies that you can address over time, renegotiating contracts and that sort of thing. But in terms of for the immediate scenario that you find yourself in as a practice owner, I think the key is having transparency with your staff, being comfortable with that, so that your staff understands you are doing things in the clinic that generate money for the clinic. We take that money and we pay you. That's how this works. We don't pull money off the money tree because you have your OCS and say, here's some money off the money tree. You have your OCS. We have to help therapists connect the dots. How exactly do they generate revenue for themselves? Once they know that, it's simple. Generate more revenue, you get paid more. That's the way this works. I had a conversation with a very young orthopedic surgeon who moved into the town where my clinics were not too long ago. And I got a flyer in the mail that he was going to be doing a presentation at a local restaurant that was popular with the retirement age community. And he was going to be talking about hip replacement strategies. So I went to the conference and I sat there with everybody else who had their white and gray hair, and then me. And he did a presentation. He was probably 34 years old. He did a presentation on his hip replacement strategies, introduced himself, let everybody know he was new to town, new to the practice. After it was over, I went up to him and I introduced myself to him. And I asked him, if you don't mind me asking, how do you get paid? Hope that's an okay question. And he said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, do you get a salary from the orthopedic practice that you joined? And he said, well, no, I get paid based on the cases that I generate. And I said, well, are you being paid today to do this presentation? And he laughed and he said, well, who would pay me? I said, I don't know, maybe the practice, the partners. He said, no, I'm here because I'm trying to build my caseload. I said, so you're building your caseload, you're not getting paid to do this. When you do a case, you get paid. Is that correct? He said, yes, that's correct. I was driving home afterwards and I thought, what is wrong with us as a profession that we can't connect those dots? Why is it that we as owners feel that if one of our therapists is going to go out into the community and do X, that we have to pay them to do that as some sort of for example, a bonus to go do that? When the orthopedic surgeon understands that that's just a function of generating interest in someone coming to me for my services. And then that's how I get paid and when. So I think to answer your question, Will, is we've got to help therapists and we have to make sure that we as owners aren't getting in the way of this or potentially muddying the waters, where therapists are understanding that the way you get paid is by generating revenue for the practice. And if you'd like to earn more, you can generate more revenue for the practice and you'll have the opportunity to earn more.
I want to take a slightly different perspective on that question. I know who it's coming from, so I already know he's doing this, Gabe. But for everyone else, the first thing you have to do is answer the question, do you have a profitable business model? It's, every client that comes in, usually when I'm talking to them, because I can figure it out fairly quickly, if you do not have a profitable business model, meaning that the amount of money you're bringing in on average it can't support what it's costing you to deliver care. Now, obviously, this is not for small people like below $500,000 because it's just you. But I'm talking about as you get bigger, for instance, if you're seeing one patient an hour and getting paid $65 a visit and you're in New York City, that is an unsustainable model. You have to look at that first. All right. I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to over the years that I ask, well, how did you come up with your treatment model, your payment model? Or like, well, and they usually go into words like quality care, I want to do something that's really ethical and moral, and I don't want to be like the chop shops or the mills. Like they use all of this emotional verbiage stuff, but what they're not using is black and white numbers, right? So that means we're making decisions of something so important like this, and we have a model that doesn't matter how much you learn, doesn't matter how much you market, doesn't matter what, your model is broken. And that has to be fixed before, because you might not be able to afford to pay people fairly because your business just isn't set up correctly. That's on you, not your employee. Now, having said that, once all of that is done correctly, I still believe you need to double down on what you're about, who this position is for, the type of person that will soar in your business, and get away from hiring the people that we're kind of talking about that want to basically, when I hear work-life balance, typically I hear don't want to work, that have all these issues with money, that, feel like you should give them everything, they should work. Just raise your standards. Most of the people on this call don't have companies so big that they need 1 million people. We just need a few good people. And the way to separate yourself from everyone else's and all those bullshit ads that are out there that are basically just selling commodities, money for time, is to stand for something. Who are you and what are you about? And attract that person that wants that. Then you can have the conversation Jason's talking about. But if you don't have the right person that's a part of you, those conversations are going to fall flat. And for many of us, it means you may not have that team right now. So there may need some as you kind of rebuild your company. But there's enough people out there, even with the decline and all, there's enough people out there to fill us, to get the right people. I've worked with people that
That's
said,
true.
Jamey, I haven't had a person in a year. And I went, well, show me your ad. Will would have thrown up if he's seen the ad. Will's probably seen all these ads before and his recruiting company. And it's like, well, who the hell's going to respond to this ad? It looks like everyone else's ad. It's all transactional language. There's nothing emotionally connecting. People want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. They want to be a part of something real. They want to be a part of something where they can grow and evolve. If you're not providing that, you're not going to find those people. So I think that's where it starts. And then it's a matter of how to manage their wants and needs and how you can creatively, strategically provide that without literally writing checks out of your own family's pocket. Those
Love
are
it.
my thoughts on that. I know we said, what did we say? An hour and a half on this?
Hour.
Said an hour. That was a quick hour.
I went
An hour?
fast.
I don't know. Next time we might do 90 minutes.
I think we should. And I would love to hear from everybody, like some sort of follow-up if this is something that resonated with. If this has served you guys, let Jamey or me or Jason know, depending on who reached out to you. But we'd like to hear if this created value and what you'd like to hear more about maybe on the next call. Otherwise, we'll just be left to our own devices to talk whatever we want to talk about.
Well, I'll tell you, everyone's going to get an email follow-up because I do what I preach to do. So everyone's going to get a follow-up email. Everyone's going to get the recording. If you want to get in touch with me or Jason or Will, there'll be a link to get in touch with us to have a conversation if you're interested. The email comes from me. So yes, I have an email system, but if you respond to it, it actually comes to me. So if you do have any input, any feedback, happy to hear it, any topics in the future. This was a one-time only because we didn't know how this was going to go, but we're gonna debrief this and we're going to talk about it and see if it's something that will add value. So if you can provide feedback to us, that would be fantastic. Other than that, I want to thank my two great co-hosts, Jason Wambold from Onus One and Will Humphreys from Rockstar Recruiter and the other businesses that you have like 3-4 other businesses. But as for myself, thank you so much for being here, and hopefully we'll see you again real soon.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.